enforcement agencies reduce the threat of gun and gang violence, and by extension, it enables us to help victims of these crimes. So today I want to welcome Premier Ford to 23 Division for an announcement that will help law enforcement strengthen our commitment to public safety. Thank you. Premier Ford.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of everyone standing with me, I want to thank Chief Raymer for having us here at 23rd Division. Earlier today, I had the pleasure of addressing the members of the Police Association of Ontario at their annual general meeting. I want to thank, once again, all the members of the police services for the incredible work they've done keeping our community safe during this unprecedented time. We truly couldn't have done it without your help, and we're so grateful for everything that you do day in and day out. My friends, COVID-19 changed almost everything that is normal in our everyday lives. But one thing hasn't changed, hasn't stopped during the pandemic, is the gun and gang violence happening on our streets across Ontario. Let me put it into perspective. In just a year's time, the number of street gangs involved in opioid market more than doubled. And then it tripled when it comes to the methamphetamine market. It's not just drugs that are a problem. Guns remain a huge problem for communities all across Ontario. In fact, almost half of all firearm traffickers are street gangs. These are scary numbers, and it shows the size of the challenge faced when it comes to combating these criminals. Our government knows the police can't fight these thugs alone, and as Premier, I promise they'll never have to. We will spare no expense to ensure our brave women and men in uniform have everything they need to wage this battle against gun and gang activity. That's why today I'm announcing a further investment of over $75 million over 3 years to combat crime. Funding that will disrupt the drug supply chains and help investigative supports. It will help police trace firearms, identifying gun traffickers, prosecute the bad guys who put the lives of everyone in danger. This is about keeping our community safe. This is about keeping our children safe. These initiatives will disrupt gang activities and the drugs and human trafficking that fund these criminal elements. As I've said, there's no crime more deplorable, more heinous than human trafficking. There can be no mercy when it comes to cracking down on these crimes and the terrible people who commit them. And so we remain fully committed to working with our policing and community partners, arming them with the resources and tools they need to do their job to the best of their abilities. In fact, last week we announced an investment of over $267 million over the next 3 years to support community safety and policing grant program. I've said it before and I'll say it again. We will do whatever it takes to protect people from the criminals who want to do them harm and who threaten and prey on our children every single day. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement. We will never relent in our duty to keep Ontarians safe. Thank you, and God bless the people of Ontario. Now I'll hand it over to our Solicitor General.
Thank you, Premier Ford, for the introduction. Gun and gang violence has no place in Ontario. Wherever they reside, Ontarians and their loved ones deserve to live in communities that are free from violence and crime. And this expectation is one that we've always taken very seriously. Since taking office, public safety has been a top priority of our government. But we know there is more work to be done to combat gun and gang violence. Criminals continue to find new ways of conducting illegal activity, and we must never relent in our efforts to stop them. That is why I am proud of the announcement our government is making today. This additional investment of $75.1 million will help focus our efforts and bring our fight against street gangs and organized crime to the next level. Some of these new initiatives include establishing the Office of the Illicit Drug Intelligence that will provide enhanced investigative support to identify and prevent cross-border drugs, guns, and human trafficking. Working with federal and U.S. counterparts, the newly created office will play a strategic role in disrupting the drug and gun supply chain coming into Ontario. We're also investing money to assist with firearms analysis and tracing, allowing for the timely identification of gun traffickers, their networks, and smuggling routes. Because Ontario is only as safe as its borders, we will increase the presence of border enforcement security teams to curtail the flow of illegal firearms entering our province. Another important aspect of our strategy and funding today is to support our police services' investigative efforts by enhancing resources to support provincial joint forces operations and formalize collaboration among jurisdictions. Establish a province-wide joint analytics working group to improve the ability to share intelligence among police services, and create a provincial database of gun and gang activity to ensure consistency in the clarification of relevant data. Of course, all investigative efforts are only as effective if offenders are promptly brought to justice and prosecuted. That is why, to expedite the prosecution process, we'll create a mobile provincial gun and gang prosecution unit, which my colleague, the Attorney General Downey, will talk about in greater detail. I am confident that these strategic investments will bring about positive, long-lasting results. They will help to effectively disrupt gang and organized crime activities and the revenue streams that fund criminal activities, including gun, drug, and human trafficking. We know there is a strong correlation between street gangs, gun violence, drug, and human trafficking. That is why dismantling illegal activities is the only way we can truly put a stop to the violence we are seeing in our streets and in our communities. To date, along with our federal partners, our government has invested approximately $187 million to disrupt criminal activity, prevent cross-border trafficking, enhance investigative supports, and increase collaboration among the justice sector. I have also engaged my federal counterpart on ways we can continue to work collaboratively to find new proactive solutions that will support the work of frontline police to dismantle gangs and stop gun violence. By providing our frontline officers with the many tools and resources they need to do their jobs, only then can we ensure all Ontario communities will remain safe places to live, work, and play. Thank you. I'd now like to invite to the podium Attorney General Downey.
Thank you, General, and I'd like to begin by thanking Chief James Raymer and the Toronto Police Service for welcoming us here today, and I want to thank the Premier and each of my colleagues who have advocated for these new measures that will make an impactful difference on the front lines of the fight against gun crime in our communities. Investigations and prosecutions of dangerous criminal networks have grown exponentially complex in recent years, and we've responded by prioritizing public safety through our government's comprehensive guns, gangs, and violence reduction strategy. We're making historic investments to ensure police and prosecutors have the tools and resources they need to hold offenders accountable and stand up for victims as they seek justice. And today, we are delivering brand new actions driven by real-world insights and experience from prosecutors, police, and community partners. The new Gun and Gang Mobile Prosecution Unit will address complex cases in priority regions where its expertise is needed most. Mobilizing expert experienced Crown prosecutors, this new team will reinforce the local fight against the criminal networks that prey on young and vulnerable people in our communities. This new unit builds on the investments we've made to establish teams of specialized prosecutors dedicated to prosecuting firearms offenses throughout the province. It also adds to the actions we're taking to protect at-risk youth and help break the cycle of offending. Our government takes a broad view of justice to ensure we address public safety on all fronts. This is why we recently announced extraordinary new measures to ensure offenders are held accountable by tackling the unprecedented backlog of criminal cases that have accumulated in the justice system as a result of the pandemic. These net new resources will help increase the trial capacity and hire over 340 new court employees, including Crown prosecutors, court services staff, and victim support staff. And we have also passed legislation to help fill judicial vacancies faster in order to maximize the capacity of Ontario's justice system to respond to current and future challenges. I would like to conclude by thanking frontline police, prosecutors, and community partners for your commitment to fighting gun crime and the dangerous gangs who put the safety of Ontarians at risk. I stand here with the Premier, the Solicitor General, and even the Minister of Finance, who have clear evidence of our continued commitment to this central priority. With that, I will turn over to Minister of Finance, Peter Bethlenfalvy.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Minister Downey, for that introduction, and thank you to Premier Ford, Solicitor Jones, as well as MPP Hogarth and Chief James Raymer for being here, and all the team standing behind. We're doing incredible work together, and it takes a full team. Today's investment of $75 million in the Guns, Gangs, and Violence Reduction Strategy is an important and necessary step. Necessary because we continue to see violence in our communities, including in Durham Region, where gun and gang activity has left too many victims in our streets. With this investment, we are reinforcing our commitment to do everything we can to fight gun violence in our province. En procédant à cet investissement, nous renforçons notre engagement de faire tout ce que nous pouvons pour lutter contre la violence armée dans notre province. That's why we are using our fiscal resources to give our brave police officers the tools they need to help protect families, put violent criminals behind bars, and keep our communities safe. Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to take questions. If you have a question for the Premier Ministers, just form a line behind this microphone. We'll try our best to get to everyone. Just a reminder, it's one question and one follow-up.
Hey, Premier, how are you?
Good, Randy. It's really good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Boy.
Anyhow, I need to ask you about the border. The border communities are still really hurting. They're having a hard time getting up and firing the economies now. Do you think that it's time to end CPR testing to get across the border?
Well, we're going to have that discussion with the Prime Minister, and I know we had the discussion with all the premiers, and I'll give you an answer as soon as we sit down over the phone and have that discussion with them. But it did come up in the COF meeting yesterday, and the consensus is a lot of premiers want to see that. But Randy, on the economy, we need more people, and I want a further discussion. That came up at the COF meeting yesterday. Right across the country, we need more people, and the people of healthy mind, healthy body, they need to get up and find gainful employment. There's so many jobs in every single sector, everywhere I go, Randy, and I've been crisscrossing this province. The number one issue is we need people, skilled or unskilled.
Did guns come up? Is it time that we just simply don't have any handguns in this country other than with police forces?
Well, you know something, Randy, guns didn't come up last night. Might not be as prevalent as it is here in Toronto and the GTA, but that's a question we'll sit down with the Solicitor General, Attorney General, and the Cabinet and discuss. But great to see you again, Randy.
Hi, Premier. I wanted to ask you about the childcare deal that you haven't been able to strike yet with the federal government. Jason Kenney reached one yesterday. Alberta's getting $3.8 billion for 4.3 million people. But Ontario, with 15 million people, is only getting offered $10.2 billion. I'm just wondering if is the impasse between your government and Prime Minister Trudeau's government the fact that it's a money thing? It's $3 billion apart? Or?
Yeah, you nailed it. You know, I'm just not going to make a deal for the sake of making a deal. We're seeing these deals signed, as you mentioned, that they're more per capita with less strings attached. And my good friend Francois, he got a great deal, no strings attached or minimum strings attached. So we'll sit down. We've been negotiating for a couple months. I want a deal, but I also expect the local mayors, be it Mayor Tory or other mayors, to stand united with us. I expect the federal MPs, the Liberal federal MPs, to stand with us. They represent half their caucus. So we'll strike a deal, but I'm not making a bad deal just for the sake of making a deal. And I won't hold that Green Bay Packers hat you're wearing against you since I'm a Bears fan.
The pack is back. I know. I know you're a Bears fan. It's they haven't been doing so well this year, though. Following up, Premier, is the impasse just that $3.6 billion, that difference? Because we gather the federal government isn't counting the money that Ontario pays for full day kindergarten for 4 and 5-year-olds. That's 260,000 kids. Is that the crux of the problem here?
That's a good point. It's about $3.6 billion, and I don't know of any other province that has full day junior kindergarten paying that amount. But yeah, we have to sit down. We have to make sure that there's minimal strings attached, because no one knows their province better than the premiers, the local MPs, MPPs, and mayors. So that's what we need to do, and we'll get a deal done. We've had tougher discussions than this, but I'm not going to make a deal just for the sake of making a bad deal. That's for sure.
Hi, Premier.
Hi.
Laura Stone,
Hey,
Globe and
Laura.
Mail.
How you
I
doing?
just wanted to follow up on the questions about childcare.
Yep.
What do you say to your critics who are essentially accusing Ontario of bungling this? That most other provinces
Yeah,
have a
well-
deal. Ontario's left in the dust. You haven't submitted the paperwork to the federal government.
Yeah.
And come the new year, parents are going to have lower rates in other provinces. What do you say to
Well,
those
the
people?
critics have never made a deal. I've made deals my whole life. I've made deals since I've been in office, and even the pandemic deal. If it wasn't for Ontario, we'd be about $3 or $4 billion short on that. I'm going to stick with our guns. I need the support of the local mayors to be united. I need the support of the MPs, especially the Liberal MPs. I'm not going to be shortchanged on this deal. Plus, we need sustainability. We need this to be ongoing. What's going to happen after 5 years? They're going to wash their hands and walk away, and we're stuck with the funding? No, we need a good deal. We want the same deal as our friends, and I call them our friends because one of my closest allies is Francois Legault. I want the same deal as he does. He has minimum strings attached, and they're getting a lot more per capita, and so is my good friend Jason Kenney. God bless him. But they need to come to the table, and they need to present us with a proper deal. I'm not going to get the short end of the stick on this. I have to represent the people of Ontario. The worst thing we could do, the worst, is sign a bad deal. And it's going to cost us a fortune. And while everyone else, has a good deal. So we'll get there.
Why do you think, or why do you think that Ontario would be getting shortchanged when these other provinces aren't? I mean, they have very
You're gonna have
predominant
to- yeah, you're gonna have-
ministers here.
Well, you're going to have to ask, the federal education minister. You're going to have to ask the PM. And, I have a great relationship with the deputy prime minister. I spoke with her over the weekend. We have a great relationship. We both agree we're going to get a deal. And by the way, we trust each other on making a deal as well. Christia, we've had a great relationship. She's very honorable, and we'll get there. We went through this before.
So you're getting involved? Are you getting
Well,
involved?
we're going to be involved, and along with the Minister of Education. And by the way, Stephen Lecce is doing an incredible job on his side of negotiating. But we'll get there. We'll get there as sure as I'm standing here.
Hi, Premier Ford. Adrian Gabriel, City
How
News.
you doing, Adrian?
Good, thank you. On today's announcement, if we look south of the border, we can see the billions of dollars spent on the war on drugs. We've heard former chiefs of police in this city say we can't spend our way out of this problem. So how do you believe that another announcement with more millions of dollars being poured into guns and gangs is going to make any difference on the streets?
I think it's going to be a huge difference. We need more boots on the ground. We need more police officers on the ground. They've been stressed out. Their budgets are always under review, always being chopped. We need to put money back in there to have the women and men in uniform out there going after these gangs and guns. It's very simple. This, as the COVID kept going and affected our lives, never affected their lives. They just ramped it up with opioids and methamphetamines that are killing our young people. It's killing our young people. If we just stand back and say, we aren't going to give you any money, by the way, go do the job, it doesn't cut it. We need to go out there aggressively after these gangs and hold them accountable. But then we need enforcement. We have to make sure our JPs, Justice Peace, when they get one of these criminals, they don't let them out the next day. And that's the most frustrating thing when police officers around this province, I hear it firsthand, they arrest a gang member, and guess what? The next day, they're thumbing their nose at the police, and they're back out, selling their drugs and selling their guns. So we need all reinforcements on the ground, and have all the confidence in all our police services across the province.
I was speaking today with members of this community and a former gang member as well, gang leader, who said that when they were growing up in this area, there were more resources, there was more community services, there was more places and outlets for kids to go. And they say that that's really what's needed, as well as people, outreach workers, plainclothes officers going out and building those relationships in the community to learn where the guns are, to learn when they're coming in. Is any of today's money going to help the community, to help from the grassroots?
Yeah, we just, as I announced, we invested over 200, I think it's 290 some odd million for community outreach and making sure that the police can interact with the communities. And I'll be very frank. You talk about community policing, ask anywhere in Ontario, there's no better community policing than there is with Superintendent Ron Tabner. He's so deeply engaged with every single part of this community. Everyone knows them and feels comfortable talking to them. That's the other thing. You got to knock down the barriers that when the police go there, they're there to help. They aren't there to, create problems. They're there to help. But we need more community policing, and I have all the confidence, not only in our Toronto Police, but our York and Peel and OPP. They're doing a great job.
Hi, Premier. Lorenda Redicop with
Hi,
CBC. Hi. Following up on that, when your government came to power, it cut programs for youth to help youth in communities like this one. It sounds like when you're talking about other money that your government has provided, it's connected to policing. But we've heard from some community members, they're not comfortable with the police. So what will your government do to help people and perhaps bring back programs?
Yeah, well, we're bringing programs back. Matter of fact, I'll speak for my area that we're in. We increased funding to the Albion Boys and Girls Club. We're going to focus on, supporting areas, no matter if it's as simple as working with them at the Y or other programs within the community. But I'll pass it over to the Solicitor General here.
Many of the programs that we are making available actually have a joint initiative. So you have to connect as a police service, you have to connect with organizations within the community that are actively engaged. So very specific, human trafficking obviously is a focus of our government. The human trafficking granting programs that we've put in place, you partnership with organizations that are working in the human trafficking field, assisting survivors who are themselves survivors. So we've made sure that the programs themselves are leveraging existing community programs, and we'll continue to do that. But our government is not going to walk away from our communities and our families that are looking for leadership and looking for assistance when their communities and neighborhoods are under siege. And that's part of why we are making sure that police departments and individuals have the tools they need to get this job done, because people expect that. It's really important that we don't give up on our families and our neighborhoods. Thank you.
And we've heard that your government will soon start allowing pharmacies to allow symptomatic testing for COVID soon. So somebody with COVID symptoms could be walking through their shoppers and go to the back and get their COVID test. We've heard concern that this is going to put both customers and staff at risk. How will your plan protect people?
Well, we're going to have the protocols in place, just similar to when COVID was at its absolute peak. Right now, as we've seen, close to 89%, we're hitting almost 90%. The people are double vaxxed. We have strong protocols in place. We have strong IPAC systems within our hospitals. We've learned so much over the period, over the last 20 months. So we're going to be very cautious. We're going to also keep it to a region. You've seen a couple of regions had to go back a little bit or put things on hold, but what we've put together is working. It's not affecting all of Ontario. If we see a problem up in Sudbury, we've given them the flexibility to make decisions, and we're going to give all the health sectors within the province, they're going to have the flexibility to make their own decisions, public health, I should say, to make their own decisions.
But for people walking into a pharmacy, how do you make sure that they'll, that the other customers in there will be protected?
Well, when you walk in, first of all, anyone walking into the stores, we still have a masking policy. They're gonna have dedicated lines going into the pharmacy, but we're gonna throw everything we can at it. And I think the pharmacies were one of the saviors when it came to making sure that we got people vaccinated. They played such a major part in it. The independent pharmacies and the other big brand pharmacies. So I have confidence they'll do a fine job. How you doing?
Premier, my question is for the Attorney General, actually. Yes. Steve Ryan from CP24. Thank you for taking my question, sir. We've heard many chiefs over the years talk about not being able to arrest their way out of this gun and gang problem in some of these marginalized communities. How committed is your government to addressing the root causes of these issues, and what are you doing to address the root causes?
It's a great question, and it's a complex area. Obviously, these are not simple solutions. So we're doing a number of things at the same time. The thing that we're announcing today is that we're putting resources into place so that we can follow through on issues when the police identify and act on them. And so my part in the announcement is dealing with the mobile prosecution unit, so we can put the best and most experienced minds into enforcing the charges that have been laid and getting to the best evidence and dealing with that. There are many other initiatives we could talk. I could stand here for half an hour and talk about justice centers, talk about other ways that we're doing business to deal with some of the social ills that come to bear in that space. We're not just a one lane on this, but what we're announcing today is a coordinated effort to go after those human traffickers, to go after those gangs.
Thank you for that. My follow-up is for you as well. Anybody who's worked with a Crown Attorney, Assistant Crown Attorney, or knows of one, understands a tremendous, number one, responsibility that they have to prosecute these crimes. And they've been overburdened forever. What are you doing to address that issue? Are you just bringing a group of old Crowns together? And what I mean by old Crowns is people who are employed as Crown Attorneys now, or are you going outside to hire more to alleviate that burden on them?
We're bringing to bear, and I mentioned in my remarks, $75 million to deal with our backlog strategy, and that will harness the talent that is already there, but it will expand 340 net new individuals for victim supports as well. So it's not just Crown prosecutors, it's across the system to make sure the system's working properly on a larger scale. So it's Crown prosecutors, it's the victim supports, and court workers, everything in between.
Thank you.
This will be our final reporter.
Hi, Premier.
Hi, how you doing?
Holly, pretty good. How are you?
Good.
I'm with the Canadian Press, Holly Mackenzie-Suter. I'm just, you mentioned a little bit earlier about some of the regions, health units that are having, you know, particular issues with the latest wave are starting to reintroduce capacity limits that you lifted a couple of weeks ago, last month. And I'm getting the sense that your government is going to let the PHUs take the lead this time, you know, at this point in COVID, but I'm just wondering, based on how the third wave went when you eventually did have to reintroduce province-wide measures after taking that approach, do you really think this is the right method to wait until things get bad and kind of leave it up to the doctors to decide what to do?
Well, good question. It's like apples and oranges compared to where we are now versus where we were back in the spring. So more people are vaccinated. As I mentioned earlier, almost 90% of the people are vaccinated, and we truly believe the plan is the right plan. After consultation with the Chief Medical Officer and all 34 medical officers, they felt that was the right plan to move forward, to have the flexibility. If folks like, I'll use Sudbury again as an example, if the local medical officer of health feels they need to pause things, we can pause things. But that's why we also paused moving forward. And the next step, we just want to be cautious, and we just want to make sure we continue going in the right direction. We see the numbers climb a little bit, but I take all the advice off the Chief Medical Officer. We're in good communications, and we'll get through this slowly but surely, but we got to do it cautiously.
Yeah, and the science table and the experts are pretty much saying at this point, without putting in more measures, the growth is going to be sustained. It's just a question of how bad. So I'm just wondering if there is a point, a specific public health metric at which your government is going to intervene and reintroduce measures to the whole province or an individual public health unit.
I'll rely on the Chief Medical Officer, as I have from day one. He's the expert, and local medical officers, that's who I rely on. Okay, thanks everyone. Take care.